I want you to just sit with a feeling for a moment, especially if you were listening to this late at night or, perhaps during a commute where you finally have a single second to breathe.
Right, that one rare moment of quiet.
Exactly. Just think about how your mind and body have been operating lately. Do you ever feel like you are constantly in motion, utterly depleted, and yet somehow you're completely incapable of just stopping?
Yeah, unable to just shut it down.
Right. Like you might lie down at the end of the day, your body's incredibly heavy, but the moment you close your eyes, there's this invisible, almost electric pressure, and it's just pulling your attention back out into the current.
It is a very specific, deeply modern kind of exhaustion. I mean, it's not the physical tiredness of having chopped wood all day, you know.
No, not at all.
It is a quiet cognitive friction. It just sort of hums in the background of almost everything we do, like a fluorescent light you can't quite hear until someone finally points it out.
Oh, that hum. That is exactly what we are going to focus on today. Because we have a really fascinating stack of notes in front of us exploring a philosophical framework known as reflective humanism.
It's a really deep well of material.
It is. And within these materials, there are some deeply intriguing documents, specifically one labeled Thesis Number 82 from the Core Fields version 1.4 project.
Which sounds very technical, but it's incredibly grounded.
Right, it is. So our mission for this deep dive is going to be a little different than our usual pace. We aren't here to, rapid fire through life hacks or productivity tips.
No, definitely not the vibe today.
We are going to take our time. We really want to quietly observe the architecture of how we live right now. Specifically, the structure of what the authors call chronic fixed states in modern civilization.
Which I think requires a fundamental shift in how we typically diagnose societal problems.
How so?
Well, usually when we analyze the health of a culture, we are sort of trained to look for the explosion, right? The dramatic event.
Oh yeah, we look for the absolute collapse, like a financial crash or a systemic failure, a complete breakdown where everything just grinds to a halt.
Exactly. But the central, frankly counterintuitive observation running through these sources is that the true crisis of our modern society isn't a sudden collapse at all.
Right.
Instead, it is a state of being chronically unrecoverable.
Chronically unrecoverable. That's a heavy phrase.
It really is. It means we have a system that continues to function day in and day out while gradually, silently losing the very biological and structural ability to recover.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I think we need to ground it. What does this actually look like when we observe it in the wild? Like in our own daily routines?
I mean, it looks like a society that has entirely confused survival mode with stability.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If we look at the symptoms defining our era, they are going to sound incredibly familiar to anyone navigating, say, a modern workplace. Burnout, hyperarousal.
Chronic fatigue.
Exactly. A constant low-grade reaction to microstimuli. And what the text acutely identifies as shortened judgment cycles.
I was really struck by that exact phrase when I read the notes. Shortened judgment cycles. It implies that we literally no longer possess the temporal space to evaluate anything deeply.
We just don't have the time.
Right. We are stripped of contemplation, leaving us with only reaction. You react to a Slack message, you react to a breaking news alert, you react to an email, and it's all within seconds.
And the profound danger hiding inside that constant reaction is the illusion of functionality.
Yes, the illusion.
Because society looks at an individual who is, continuing to produce, continuing to post on social media, continuing to answer emails from bed at 11 at night.
Which is so common now.
Right, and the collective assumption is simply, well, the machinery's still moving, so it must be fine. We look at unbroken exhaustion and we mislabel it as resilience.
That is so true. It feels incredibly similar to carrying around a smartphone that is trapped at 1% battery.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Like it refuses to actually shut down, right?
Yeah, and what do you do when your phone hits that critical 1%?
You start stripping away all the features that make the phone useful just to keep the core processor running.
Exactly. You go into survival mode.
You dim the screen until you can barely read it. You aggressively close every background app. You turn off the cellular data. You are just desperately doing the bare minimum to keep the screen from going totally black.
And people are living their entire lives in that exact state of total depletion.
Yeah, they really are. They cancel plans with friends. They eat poorly. They drop their hobbies, all just to keep their professional or social screen, so to speak, from going dark.
They are technically functioning, but they are entirely compromised.
Completely.
What's fascinating here is how accurately that describes our misdiagnosis of true health.
Right, because we think functioning equals healthy.
Exactly. But within the reflective humanism framework, a system running on 1% that refuses to shut down is not healthy, it is trapped.
It's just stuck there.
We have engineered environments, corporate structures, digital social spheres where stopping is implicitly penalized. So we just keep twitching,
So if we are observing this widespread, unbroken exhaustion, the natural progression is to ask why we can't simply choose to stop.
which is the big question.
Right. And this takes us from the surface observation down into the mechanical structure of the modern world. The sources describe the engine behind this as the civilizational synchronization structure.
Yeah, the synchronization structure. This is really the underlying architecture of our entrapment.
How does the text break that down?
Well, it operates as a continuous four-part chain reaction. First, society achieved high-speed communication.
Right, the internet, smartphones.
Exactly. And because we can now communicate across the globe instantly, it necessitates the second step, which is high-speed evaluation.
Meaning we have to judge the information instantly.
Right. Every piece of information, every message, every global event is judged, categorized, or discarded immediately.
Which then forces the third step high-speed reaction. Because the evaluation happens instantly, your response is expected instantly. You can't let an email sit for 3 days anymore. The culture demands an answer right now.
And all of that culminates in the fourth and honestly most insidious step, high-speed optimization.
Optimization.
Yeah, the constant drive to make that whole cycle of communication, evaluation, and reaction faster and more efficient.
I have to admit, I really struggled with that last point when I was reading through the notes.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, because on the surface, shouldn't high-speed optimization actually reduce our friction?
That's the logical assumption, right?
Yeah. Like, if I use software to optimize my workflows, if I automate my calendar, if I use templates for my emails, I objectively have more tools to save time than my parents did.
You technically do.
So why am I more exhausted? How is the very thing designed to save me time trapping me in this fixed state?
It's a great question. And it's because we have to look at what optimization actually does to the space in between your actions.
The space in between.
The sources utilize a cognitive processing model they call the MCP framework, and within it, they identify a very specific state, the S3.5 chronic depolarization phase.
Okay, S3.5 chronic depolarization phase. That's quite a mouthful.
It is. But to understand it, we can just look at basic biology. Think about the human heart.
Okay.
When a muscle like the heart contracts to pump blood, it undergoes depolarization. But for that heart to beat a second time, it fundamentally has to repolarize.
It has to reset.
Exactly. It requires a physical, temporal margin of rest, even if it's just a fraction of a second.
So the heart physically cannot function without the empty space between the beats?
Precisely. Now, what high-speed optimization does in our modern lives is it identifies that empty space as an inefficiency.
Oh, wow.
It systematically removes the margin for recovery. You don't use the time saved by your optimized calendar app to sit in silence. You use it to fit in 3 more virtual meetings.
That makes an unsettling amount of sense. So the S3.5 phase is characterized by the complete loss of the repolarization margin. There is literally no space to recover.
Not at all.
We are just left dealing with constant reactions to microstimuli, which the framework refers to as local cognitive inflammation. So the workload itself isn't necessarily the primary danger.
No, the true danger is that optimization has deleted the pause.
Deleted the pause. We are a heart trying to maintain a continuous contraction without ever relaxing.
Yes. And it forces us to confront how historically unprecedented this is. I mean, a century ago, a letter took weeks to arrive.
Right, you'd just be waiting.
And that delay wasn't just an inefficiency. It was a built-in margin for cognitive recovery. You sent a message, and then you were forced to release the anxiety of it until the reply came.
But today, the delay is completely gone. The S3.5 state means you are perpetually bracing for the next input.
Perpetually.
So if our minds are literally being denied the space to recover, it kind of makes me wonder how our modern digital tools are exploiting that vulnerability.
They absolutely are.
Because when you bring the current iterations of social media and artificial intelligence into a system that is already chronically inflamed, how does that accelerate this synchronization?
They act as the ultimate accelerators because they're built purely on the architecture of evaluation.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Take social networking sites or what the notes refer to as SNS fatigue, these platforms trap us in an unbroken infinite scroll of evaluation culture.
Oh, the infinite scroll. Yeah.
You are constantly connected, constantly having your social value measured through metrics, likes, views, shares, and you're constantly adjusting your psychological position based on high-speed external feedback.
And when you are processing, say, a geopolitical crisis, and then a meme, and then a friend's vacation, and then a terrifying news alert, all within a 10-second scroll,
It's overwhelming.
it is. Your brain is just misfiring, trying to assign emotional weight to it all.
Mhm.
And the sources introduce this really haunting concept to describe the fallout of this. They call it transparent pain.
Transparent pain. It's such a brilliant term.
They define it as the intense friction between the nonlinear, high-speed gradient of the external digital world and our internal, highly linear cognitive operating systems.
Right, because our human consciousness is deeply biological. It possesses a natural rhythm.
It needs time.
It requires physical time to synthesize experiences into meaning. However, the external information environment we have constructed operates at the speed of light, and it is entirely nonlinear.
Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Exactly. When you force a linear biological system to process a non-linear high-speed environment, the resulting friction generates pain.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because they call it transparent pain, meaning it isn't a broken bone.
Right, you can't see it.
You can't point to it on an X-ray, and society doesn't hand you a doctor's note for it.
And because you can't see it, you often blame yourself for feeling it. You assume you are simply not resilient enough.
It feels almost like a software incompatibility error constantly running in the background of a computer.
That's a great way to think about it. Imagine installing a cutting-edge, incredibly demanding program onto a 10-year-old laptop.
Right. The laptop doesn't physically explode.
No, but the cooling fans are screaming, the battery drains in 20 minutes, and every other basic function slows to an absolute crawl.
You can't see the code crashing, but you experience the systemic failure. That is the transparent pain.
Precisely.
It's draining our cognitive battery, creating this invisible digital migraine simply because the human brain was not structurally designed to process a continuous 24/7 data feed.
And that pain is a vital signal. It is your internal operating system throwing up an error code, desperately struggling to update.
It's crying out for a pause.
It is the friction point between human consciousness and the architecture of the modern information environment. And this precise friction is why reflective humanism proposes a radically different alternative approach to how we design our future.
Particularly regarding artificial intelligence, right?
Yes, exactly.
Because usually, when we talk about AI, we view it as the ultimate high-speed optimization tool. It is positioned as the perfect engine to generate more communication, more evaluation, and faster reactions.
Which, under this framework, would merely deepen the S3.5 chronic depolarization phase.
It would just make it worse.
It would just remove whatever tiny fragments of empty space we have left.
But the text argues that AI should not merely be deployed as an information-increasing machine.
Right. It envisions AI acting as an atmospheric health scan.
An atmospheric health scan.
That is such a beautiful way to reframe it. Instead of an oracle that you constantly query for faster answers, it suggests an environment that protects you.
The idea is that AI shouldn't force meaning or demand constant interaction. It should operate as a gentle environment, an atmosphere that actively helps tune our cognitive homeostasis.
It's working in the background.
Right. Imagine an intelligent system whose primary goal isn't to maximize your engagement, but to recognize your cognitive load, and it automatically buffers the information reaching you, providing a space where you can exist without the pressure of constant evaluation.
Exactly.
It's treating the technology like the thermostat in a quiet room. It doesn't scream the temperature at you, it just regulates the environment so you can finally breathe.
It generates silence rather than just adding more noise.
This raises an important question, though.
What's that?
Well, if we recognize that we are currently trapped in this transparent pain, locked in chronic synchronization, what does the alternative method of living actually look like?
How do we actually live this out?
Right. How do we generate meaning and progress and time without burning ourselves out in the process?
The sources draw a really profound contrast here between two types of generation. The first is what we are intimately used to, discontinuous generation, which they also refer to as collision.
Collision, okay.
Discontinuous generation occurs when the gap between you and the external world is so steep, so demanding, that updates to your worldview are forced upon you abruptly.
Like a shock to the system.
It is quite literally a collision. It generates massive heat, it causes deep cognitive pain, and it forces a sudden, jarring jump in your reality.
To put that in, like, deeply relatable terms, discontinuous generation is like when your company suddenly rolls out a massive, complex software system overnight.
Oh, that is the worst.
Right. You walk in on Monday morning, completely blind,
Yeah.
and you are forced to adapt instantly or you fail. It is pure stress.
The alternative proposed by the text is continuous generation, which they beautifully associate with the concept of the question.
Good question.
A question, unlike a forced conclusion or a sudden mandate, keeps the interference field open. It maintains a gentle, manageable gradient.
So going back to our example, continuous generation would be like learning that same complex software piece by piece over the course of a year.
Driven by your own curiosity.
Yeah, driven by your own natural curiosity and the specific needs of your daily task. You are still updating, you are still interacting with the world and progressing, but the process is continuous, it's integrated, and the pain of adaptation is minimized.
It allows you to quietly change the angle of your trajectory without breaking your rhythm.
But the tragedy of our current era is that living in a state of continuous generation requires specific environmental conditions.
Yes, it does.
You cannot maintain a gentle gradient while you are trapped in survival mode.
No, it's impossible. And the notes heavily emphasize that there are crucial layers of human civilization that have been aggressively stripped away by optimization, and they desperately need restoring.
Layers like true silence,
Yeah.
generous margins, natural fluctuation, and honestly, my absolute favorite concept from the reading, asynchrony.
Asynchrony is huge.
Non-synchronous time. The social and professional permission to just not respond immediately.
Because all of those layers, silence, margins, asynchrony, are the fundamental prerequisites for what the reflective humanism framework calls reconnectability.
Reconnectability.
Yes, the profound ability to safely disconnect from the network, knowing with absolute certainty that you can reconnect later without having lost your place or your value.
Without being punished for stepping away.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it changes how we view modern morality. The ethical challenge of our era is no longer just about rigid, traditional rules of right and wrong.
What is it about then?
It is about what the text calls the technique of sustaining interference. How do we maintain healthy, functional relationships with an overwhelming ocean of information and with each other without constantly invading each other's cognitive spaces?
Wow. It requires us to develop something that feels incredibly difficult today. What they call pause tolerance.
Pause tolerance.
The capacity to sit with unresolved space. The strength to receive a message and tolerate the tension of not firing back an immediate reply.
Just letting it be unread for a minute.
Right. And I think that phrase, pause tolerance, is exactly why this framework matters so deeply to you, the person listening to this right now.
It's deeply personal.
It is. Understanding this structure gives you the explicit permission to value empty space. It is a defense against the guilt of resting.
You don't have to be productive every second?
No. You have to start viewing silence, unresponsiveness, and disconnection not as wasted productivity and not as a failure to optimize your life, but as the fundamental architecture of your own recovery and sanity.
If you do not actively build the pause back into your life, the heart simply cannot beat again.
Exactly.
It is the realization that being a fully functional human being actually requires the margin to step away from the gradient. We have to purposefully design our lives and ultimately our broader society to aggressively protect that margin.
So what does this all mean when we step back and look at the whole picture?
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. We started by quietly observing a symptom we all share, the hum of unbroken exhaustion.
That invisible pressure.
Right. And then we peeled back the layers to see the mechanical structure beneath it, that chronic synchronization. The S3.5 phase, where the very margin to repolarize has been optimized out of existence.
The empty space was deleted.
We sat with the transparent pain of forcing a biological brain to process a light-speed digital environment. And we arrived at the understanding that true health requires the restoration of silence and asynchrony.
It demands a profound paradigm shift in how we evaluate our systems.
It really does.
We must deeply recognize that the ultimate danger to a society, or even just to a human mind, is not that it suddenly breaks in a spectacular visible collapse.
That's not the real threat.
No. The most insidious, quiet danger is a system that does not break, but entirely loses the ability to ever recover.
A system that fundamentally forgets how to rest but forces itself to keep moving anyway.
Yeah.
Well, we promised at the beginning that we were just going to observe today rather than force a neat conclusion on you,
Some concepts need space to breathe.
especially if we are ever going to practice that pause tolerance. If the ultimate goal is reconnectability, it really makes you wonder how we actually build that future. Does it require a complete technological regression? Or is there a way to build a future where our technology actively enforces our boundaries instead of destroying them?
It's something to really sit with.
It is. So we want to leave you with a quiet, lingering thought to hold on to as you step back into the rush of your day. Think about your own margins and ask yourself, what would a recoverable society actually look like?